Ladies and gentlemen, when you stop seeking approval from others, the most profound transformation that takes place is the rise of self-validation. Self-validation is the process of recognizing your own worth, acknowledging your emotions, and affirming your experiences without needing confirmation or permission from external sources. It is an internal declaration that your feelings, choices, and identity are enough, even if no one else acknowledges them. This shift creates a powerful inner alignment, where you no longer measure your value based on how others view you, but based on how you view yourself. In a world that constantly demands likes, followers, and applause, the act of stepping away from approval, seeking behavior is a radical form of self-love. It means you no longer tie your happiness to someone else's opinion. You begin to validate your dreams, even if they don't fit society's mold. You start trusting your instincts, even when they go against the crowd. Self-validation brings clarity. You stop second-guessing yourself because you've learned to listen to your inner voice. That voice grows stronger and clearer the moment you no longer chase validation outside of yourself. One of the immediate effects of self-validation is emotional strength. You become more resilient to criticism, rejection, or indifference because your self-worth is not fragile, it's rooted. People can disagree with you, and it won't shatter you. They can misunderstand you, and you won't feel the need to explain yourself endlessly. When you validate yourself, you realize that your truth doesn't need universal agreement to be valid. You stop apologizing for existing as you are. Another incredible benefit is authenticity. Seeking approval often forces people to wear masks, to say yes when they mean no, to act confident when they're insecure, to follow the trends just to fit in. But once you decide that your own approval matters more, you take those masks off. You speak honestly. You show up fully. You start attracting people who appreciate the real you, not the version of you that was designed to be liked. This self-approval also ignites freedom. You're no longer imprisoned by the fear of judgment. You can pursue careers, relationships, and lifestyles that truly align with your soul. You can take risks, make bold choices, and fail without shame. You finally understand that your worth isn't to your success or failure. It's tied to your willingness to show up authentically. That is liberation. Self-validation also deepens your relationship with yourself. You begin to listen to your needs, respect your boundaries, and honor your growth. You become your own source of encouragement and support. And this internal relationship sets the tone for how others treat you. When people see that you don't need their approval to feel complete, they either rise to meet your energy, or they fall away. Either way, your peace remains intact. Moreover, it becomes easier to make decisions. Approval-seeking clouds judgment, leading people to act out of fear, guilt, or people-pleasing. But self-validation clears that fog. It allows you to ask, what do I truly want? And trust the answer, regardless of how others may respond. This clarity leads to decisions that are more aligned with your true values, and ultimately, a life that feels more fulfilling. Finally, self-validation fosters emotional maturity. You accept that not everyone will like you, agree with you, or even understand you, and that's okay. You don't take things personally because you're grounded in who you are. You give yourself the grace to feel pain, joy, anger, or doubt without shaming yourself. That emotional honesty becomes your strength. In the end, stopping the search for approval is not an act of rebellion. It's an act of awakening. When you choose self-validation, you reclaim your power. You become the author of your own worth. You stop performing and start living. You begin to walk through life with the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are. And that is one of the most beautiful and unstoppable energies anyone can embody. When you stop seeking approval from others, one of the most profound outcomes is the discovery and embodiment of authenticity. Authenticity is the courage to be yourself, unapologetically, consistently, and without the need for external validation. It's about living in alignment with your values, beliefs, and truth, even when those things don't align with what others expect of you. In a world that often rewards conformity and punishes difference, authenticity is a revolutionary act of self-trust. The journey to authenticity begins when you stop looking to others to tell you who you should be. From childhood, many of us are conditioned to please. Teachers, parents, employers. We're rewarded when we conform, when we fit in, when we meet expectations. But the price of approval is often silence, repression, and the slow erosion of self. When you make the decision to stop seeking approval, it's as though a weight is lifted. Suddenly, you can hear your own voice again. You start asking yourself, what do I really think? What do I really want? Who am I? Separate from what people want me to be. Authenticity demands honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. You can no longer pretend to enjoy things you don't like, agree with things you don't believe in, or stay in places where your spirit feels caged. This honesty may cost you certain relationships or opportunities, but what you gain is far greater self-respect. You begin to show up in the world as the real you, not the filtered or edited version you once thought people wanted. When you live authentically, your energy changes. There's a calm strength in people who know who they are. You stop performing and start living. You no longer chase approval because you already approve of yourself. This shift is magnetic. Authenticity draws in people who appreciate you for you, not for who you pretend to be. And just as importantly, it repels those who are only ever interested in the fade. You may lose some people, but you gain your tribe, the ones who truly see and celebrate the real you. Authenticity also brings clarity. When you're no longer trying to be liked, your decisions become simpler. You no longer have to analyze how every choice might be perceived. You follow what feels right. You trust your gut. You say no when you mean no and yes when you mean yes. This internal alignment is what makes authentic people so powerful. They're not pulled in 1,000 directions by other people's opinions. They walk their path with purpose. Living authentically also leads to deeper self-awareness. You learn to embrace your flaws, your quirks, your story. You stop hiding the parts of yourself that don't feel perfect and realize that those are often the parts people connect with the most. Vulnerability becomes strength, and imperfection becomes beauty. Authenticity allows you to show up messy, human, and whole. There is also a spiritual freedom that comes with authenticity. You are no longer bound by need to be understood or accepted. You realize that your worth is not dependent on applause. You were enough before anyone approved of you, and you remain enough no matter who walks away. This is where true confidence is born, not from being liked, but from being real. Authenticity also brings clarity. When you're no longer trying to be liked, your decisions become simpler. You no longer have to analyze how every choice might be perceived. You follow what feels right. You trust your gut. You say no when you mean no and yes when you mean yes. This internal alignment is what makes authentic people so powerful. They're not pulled in 1,000 directions by other people's opinions. They walk their path with purpose. Living authentically also leads to deeper self-awareness. You learn to embrace your flaws, your quirks, your story. If you stop hiding the parts of yourself that don't feel perfect and realize that those are often the parts people connect with the most, vulnerability becomes strength, and imperfection becomes beauty. Authenticity allows you to show up messy, human, and whole. There is also a spiritual freedom that comes with authenticity. You are no longer bound by the need to be understood or accepted. You realize that your worth is not dependent on applause. You were enough before anyone approved of you, and you remain enough no matter who walks away. This is where true confidence is born, not from being liked, but from being real. Authenticity doesn't mean you're always comfortable. In fact, it often invites discomfort. It means being willing to stand alone, to speak the truth, to risk being misunderstood. But it also means living a life that's yours, fully, unapologetically, and intentionally. It's trading popularity for peace, and performance for presence. In the end, when you stop seeking approval and embrace authenticity, you don't just change how the world sees you. You change how you see yourself. You become your own authority, your own compass, your own source of truth. And in that space of self-acceptance, you find something deeper than approval. You find freedom. When you stop seeking approval from others, one of the most transformative gifts you receive is emotional freedom. Emotional freedom is the liberation of your mind and heart from the chains of needing others' acceptance to feel worthy, secure, or validated. It's about reclaiming your inner power, detaching your sense of self from external opinions, and stepping into a life where your emotions are guided by your values, not by fear of rejection or the desire to please. For much of life, Many people are trapped in the exhausting cycle of approval seeking. They tailor their actions, choices, even personalities to fit into molds created by family, friends, social expectations, or cultural norms. This creates a false self, a version of you that exists not for your fulfillment, but to avoid criticism or gain applause. But this constant self-editing drains emotional energy. It breeds anxiety, insecurity, and inner conflict. You're always wondering, what will they think? Am I good enough? Will they still like me if I say no? But the moment you stop asking those questions, not from indifference, but from inner clarity, you begin to experience emotional freedom. You stop living reactively and start living responsively. You make decisions not based on whether someone will like you more or less, but based on what is honest and right for you. That shift is subtle but seismic. You no longer feel enslaved to others' perceptions. You begin to trust your own emotional guidance system. Emotional freedom allows you to set boundaries without guilt. You can say no and still feel whole. You can walk away from relationships that demand you shrink yourself. You stop fearing disapproval because your emotional well-being no longer depends on it. This doesn't make you cold or disconnected. It makes you emotionally sovereign. You can love others deeply without being ruled by their opinions. You become emotionally available because you are emotionally independent. When you're emotionally free, your confidence grows from the inside out. You don't need compliments to feel beautiful, achievements to feel valuable, or agreement to feel valid. You approve of yourself. That self-approval becomes your anchor in any storm. You can handle criticism with grace, not defensiveness. You can hear no and not spiral. You can be misunderstood and still stand tall. Because you're no longer seeking emotional safety from others. You've found it within. This freedom also leads to emotional authenticity. You can express your feelings without masking them to make others comfortable. You cry when you're sad, laugh when you're joyful, and speak your truth without apology. You stop pretending and start connecting. This kind of emotional openness invites deeper, more real relationships. People begin to trust you more, not less, because you're consistent and genuine. You're not trying to be everything to everyone. You're just being you. Another powerful aspect of emotional freedom is peace. The mental noise of comparison, competition, and people-pleasing fades. You don't need to win every argument, prove your worth, or chase perfection. You're content in your being. You live lighter, freer. You sleep better at night because your conscience is clear. You've stopped negotiating your emotions to win approval and started honoring them as your truth. This doesn't mean emotional freedom is the absence of emotion. It means emotions flow through you rather than control you. You feel deeply, but you are no longer at the mercy of praise or rejection. You can detach without closing off. You love without losing yourself. You care without compromising your peace. Ultimately, emotional freedom is the foundation of a powerful life. It allows you to pursue your dreams, speak your truth, and form genuine connections, because you're no longer performing, you're living. And that kind of life is rare, radiant, and deeply rewarding. It all begins the moment you stop seeking approval and realizing you are already enough. When you stop seeking approval from others, overconfidence begins to rise from the most authentic part of your being. It's no longer borrowed from praise or inflated by likes, titles, or external validation. It becomes rooted, deep and unshakable, because it's built from within. Confidence born from self-approval is powerful. It's not arrogant, and it doesn't need to be loud. It's a quiet, steady belief in your worth, your voice, and your choices, regardless of who acknowledges them. When you're constantly chasing approval, confidence is conditional. It fluctuates based on how others respond to you. One compliment lifts you, one criticism crushes you. This cycle creates emotional dependence and keeps you in a state of insecurity, always looking outward for permission to feel good about yourself. But the moment you stop needing external affirmation, your confidence begins to stabilize. You stop measuring by value by how others see you and start recognizing your value because of who you are, not who you perform to be. As approval seeking fades, authenticity takes its place. You stop saying things just to be liked. You stop agreeing just to avoid conflict. You stop pretending to be someone you're not. And when you show up as your true self, flaws, strengths, opinions, and all, your confidence naturally grows. because it takes courage to be real, and courage is the fuel of genuine confidence. Every time you honor your truth instead of bending to fit in, you reinforce the belief that you are enough. Confidence also blossoms when you start making choices for yourself, not for applause, not for validation, but because they are right for you. Whether it's the way you dress, the career you choose, the boundaries you set, or the goals you pursue, you begin to trust your judgment. You realize that you don't need a crowd to believe in your path if you believe in it yourself. That self-trust is a game changer. It makes you walk taller, speak clearer, and act with purpose. Another powerful shift happens in how you handle rejection and criticism. When you're approval-seeking, rejection feels like a personal failure. It shakes your self-worth. But when you're confident in yourself, you understand that rejection doesn't define your value. It just reflects compatibility or timing. Criticism becomes feedback, not condemnation. You don't need everyone to agree with you to feel valid. That emotional resilience is a hallmark of true confidence. Relationships also begin to change. Instead of clinging to people out of fear of being alone, you become more selective. You choose to surround yourself with those who respect and appreciate your authentic self. You no longer settle just to feel accepted. You stop tolerating disrespect or toxicity just to maintain connection. Confidence teaches you that you'd rather be alone in truth than connected through pretense. That kind of self-respect sets a new standard for how others treat you. Confidence also makes you more generous, because you're not competing for validation. You're not threatened by other success. You can support, encourage, and uplift without needing to dim anyone else's light. Your self-worth isn't diminished by someone else's shine. It's secure, and that security is liberating. Most importantly, when you stop seeking approval, you start living for your own joy, not other people's expectations. That freedom allows your natural talents, ideas, and energy to flow without fear of judgment. You create more, risk more, try more, and express more. Because you're no longer afraid of getting it wrong. You're too focused on staying true to yourself. Confidence becomes the reward for trusting yourself, and that trust, it grows stronger every time you choose authenticity over approval. When you stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I like me?" that's when your life begins to change. You become bolder, calmer, and more grounded. Because you finally realize the only approval you ever needed was your own. When you stop seeking approval from others, inner peace begins to emerge in a powerful and lasting way. Approval seeking is a form of emotional dependency that creates constant anxiety. You find yourself walking on eggshells, adjusting your personality, and second-guessing every word or action just to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. It's exhausting. But the moment you release the need for external validation, something remarkable happens. You finally begin to feel free, and with that freedom comes peace. Inner peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of calm within, even when life is imperfect. It stems from alignment with your true self. When you stop chasing approval, you no longer have to fragment yourself to make others comfortable. You don't need to dilute your truth, hide your values, or suppress your emotions. Instead, you allow yourself to be seen as you are, and in doing so, you give yourself the permission to simply be. That authenticity is deeply liberating. It removes the inner conflict between you are and who you pretend to be, and this harmony within is what creates inner peace. The peace you gain when you let go of approval seeking also comes from the silence of your inner critic. When you're always trying to please others, your self-talk is often filled with fear and doubt. Was I good enough? Did they like me? What if they judge me? This mental noise keeps you in a loop of insecurity. But when you realize that your worth isn't dependent on anyone else's opinion, that noise starts to fade. You begin to speak to yourself with more kindness and acceptance. You no longer view yourself through the lens of others' judgments. You see yourself clearly, and that clarity is peaceful. Relationships, too, begin to shift in a peaceful direction. When you stop needing approval, you stop engaging in people-pleasing codependency or toxic dynamics. You no longer tolerate disrespect just to avoid rejection. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You set boundaries without guilt. And as you honor your own needs and space, you attract people who respect and value you for who you are, not for the version of you they can control. This shift creates more genuine and balanced connections. Relationships where peace can exist because there's no longer a power struggle or performance involved. Inner peace also comes from trusting your own path. Approval seeking often leads people to abandon their dreams, silence their voices, or follow a life that's expected, not desired. But when you stop needing others to validate your choices, you give yourself the freedom to follow your heart. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop needing a round of applause to feel good about your direction. This kind of independence allows you to move through life with quiet confidence. You make decisions that align with your values, not with others' expectations. That clarity and conviction make your internal world much calmer. Letting go of the need for approval also reduces anxiety. You stop worrying about how you're perceived. You stop overanalyzing every interaction. You stop feeling guilty for simply existing in your truth. Without the burden of constantly trying to meet others' standards, you breathe easier, you think clearer, and you live lighter. The mental and emotional weight lifts, and in its place comes peace. And finally, inner peace is sustained by the self-love that grows in the absence of approval seeking. When you stop looking outward to feel worthy, you turn inward. You begin to recognize your own light. You treat yourself with more compassion. You stop punishing yourself for not being perfect. This self-acceptance creates a stable foundation that no one can shake. You no longer need to be someone else to feel loved. You realize you are already enough. In the end, stopping the search for approval is not just a mental shift. It is a spiritual return to self. It brings a calmness that isn't dependent on circumstances or people. It reconnects you with your core, and that reconnection is where true inner peace begins. When you stop seeking approval from others, your personal power rises from within in its purest and most transformative form. Most people don't realize how much of their personal power they give away on a daily basis. Through people-pleasing, self-censorship, overthinking, and the fear of judgment. Approval-seeking becomes a silent contract where you trade your authenticity for acceptance, your confidence for comfort, and your voice for validation. But the moment you break that cycle and stop needing approval to feel worthy, you reclaim yourself. And with that, you step into your full personal power. Personal power isn't forceful or arrogant. It's quiet strength. It's the ability to stand firmly in who you are, without flinching when others disapprove. It's knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer bend yourself to meet the standards of others. When you stop needing the outside world to clap for your existence, you begin to move with clarity and conviction, not confusion and compromise. This is the foundation of personal power, self-direction, self-respect, and a deep connection to your truth. The most powerful aspect of letting go of approval is that you stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, or successful enough. You stop outsourcing your identity. Instead, you choose yourself. You give yourself permission to act, to speak, to show up. You realize that no one else gets to define your path. Only you do. And this realization doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you live. You start creating from a place of confidence, not fear. You start making decisions that honor your growth, not just your comfort zone. Without the need for approval, you begin to take up space unapologetically. You no longer shrink yourself to make others feel more secure. You no longer edit your personality to fit in. Your presence becomes magnetic, not because you're trying to impress, but because authenticity is powerful. You become someone others respect because you clearly respect yourself. This energetic shift is what makes personal power so real. It doesn't demand attention. It naturally commands it. Your personal power also allows you to speak truthfully. Approval seeking often silences people. They hold back their opinions, their dreams, and even their needs just to avoid upsetting others. But when you step out of that mindset, you start to speak from a place of honesty and courage. You express yourself even if it's uncomfortable. You advocate for your boundaries, your passions, and your future. This kind of voice doesn't just change your life, it influences others to do the same. Furthermore, personal power is deeply connected to emotional independence. Have you stopped riding the emotional roller coaster of praise and criticism? You realize that compliments don't build your identity, and criticism doesn't destroy it. You learn how to validate yourself. Whether someone loves or hates your choices, you stay centered because your self-worth isn't on the table anymore. That stability allows you to face challenges with resilience, not reactivity. You also become more discerning. When you're not driven by the need to be liked, you can actually see people for who they are. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop chasing unhealthy connections. You start surrounding yourself with people who value your presence without conditions. Your relationships deepen because they're rooted in mutual respect, not silent performance. In the end, stepping away from approval seeking is not about becoming rebellious or disconnected. It's about reclaiming your agency. It's about becoming the author of your own life rather than a character in someone else's script. That is personal power. Living in alignment with your truth, acting with integrity, and walking through life with the unshakable knowledge that who you are is already enough. When you live from this space, you don't just change your mindset, you change your reality. When you stop seeking approval from others, one of the most profound and empowering changes that takes place is the strengthening of your boundaries. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define where you end and others begin, emotionally, mentally, energetically, and even physically. When you're constantly looking for validation and approval, those lines tend to blur. You start saying yes when you mean no, accepting behavior that makes you uncomfortable, and prioritizing others' comfort over your own peace. But once you no longer need to be liked or validated, you finally give yourself permission to create and enforce boundaries that reflect your true self. The approval-seeking mindset often causes people to abandon their boundaries in an effort to be accepted. You may find yourself tolerating toxic dynamics, avoiding difficult conversations, or staying in situations that drain your spirit simply because you're afraid of being rejected or judged. This pattern is exhausting and disempowering. It slowly chips away at your self-respect. However, when you release the need for others to approve of your every decision, you take back your right to say no, to protect your energy, and to choose self first without guilt. Setting healthy boundaries is not about being rude, selfish, or distant. It's about recognizing your own needs and honoring them. It's about being in relationships, jobs, and environments where your voice is heard and your well-being is respected. When you stop seeking approval, you no longer overextend yourself just to earn love, recognition, or belonging. Instead, you begin to set limits that reflect your self-worth. You understand that saying no is not a rejection of others, but a declaration of self-respect. One powerful outcome of having strong boundaries is emotional clarity. When you're constantly compromising yourself for approval, it becomes difficult to identify how you actually feel or what you genuinely want. You're always in a state of performing, pleasing, or pretending. But once you no longer live for the reactions of others, your internal world becomes clearer. You can hear your intuition louder. You begin to trust your feelings. You learn to check in with yourself before agreeing to anything. This self-connection is the foundation for healthier relationships and better life choices. As you establish stronger boundaries, you'll also notice a shift in the types of people who surround you. Those who only benefited from your lack of boundaries may drift away or resist your growth. But those who truly value you, your well-being, your time, your truth, will respect and support your limits. You'll stop attracting relationships that thrive on guilt, manipulation, or control. Instead, you'll find alignment with people who understand mutual respect and emotional safety. Boundaries also help you conserve your energy. Seeking approval often puts you in a constant state of anxiety, second-guessing your actions, overanalyzing people's opinions, or trying to meet unrealistic expectations. But when you no longer need approval, you become much more intentional with your time and energy. You learn that your energy is sacred and should not be spent trying to win love or validation. You channel that energy into your growth, creativity, healing, and peace. Over time, boundaries become more than just protective walls. They become pathways to freedom. They allow you to live in alignment with your values without fear of rejection. You become the author of your own narrative, no longer editing your personality to fit someone else's comfort zone. Your relationships become richer, your confidence stronger, and your life more authentic. Ultimately, when you stop seeking approval, you give yourself the gift of boundaries. You stop betraying yourself for temporary acceptance. You stop shrinking to avoid criticism. You become deeply rooted in who you are, and from that grounded place, you create a life that honors your worth, your time, and your truth. Boundaries don't push people away. They create the space for genuine connection to grow, and that is when you begin to truly thrive. When you stop seeking approval from others, one of the most transformative experiences you'll encounter is liberational. This is not just a feeling of temporary relief. It is a deep, internal shift, an awakening of the soul that frees you from the invisible chains of external validation. Seeking approval often means living your life through someone else's lens. You adjust your choices, personality, appearance, and even your dreams to fit expectations that are not your own. But once you decide that your worth isn't up for negotiation, you unlock a powerful kind of freedom that changes everything. Liberation begins the moment you realize that you don't need permission to be yourself. For so long, we are conditioned to believe that acceptance equals safety, so we work tirelessly to be accepted by family, friends, co-workers, and society at large. We shape-shift into versions of ourselves that feel more palatable or agreeable. We silence our truth, avoid confrontation, and suppress desires, all for a smile, a nod, a pat on the back. But approval is fickle. What people applaud today, they might criticize tomorrow. Liberation comes when you recognize that living for that applause is a trap. When you stop seeking approval, you free yourself to think independently. You no longer need to ask, "What will they think?" Instead, you start asking, "What do I truly want?" Your thoughts become clearer, your voice stronger. You can finally hear your intuition without it being drowned out by fear of disapproval. And once you're in touch with your inner truth, your decisions become more authentic and powerful. You start moving through life on your own terms. There is a unique kind of peace that comes with this liberation. It's the peace of no longer needing to explain or justify who you are. You learn that your value is not up for debate. You learn to stop apologizing for your preferences, boundaries, or dreams. You let go of the need to convince others of your worth. That peace becomes your foundation, quiet but unshakable. Liberation also means releasing guilt. Approval seeking often goes hand in hand with guilt. You feel guilty when you say no, guilty when you stand up for yourself, guilty when you choose rest over hustle, or truth over politeness. But when you stop living for validation, you understand that guilt is often a conditioned response to self-prioritization. And you begin to replace guilt with grace. You start to treat yourself with the same compassion and understanding that you've always extended to others. This newfound freedom also creates space for courage. When you're not tethered to the need for approval, you become braver. You speak your truth. You take risks. You walk away from what no longer serves you. You stop settling for relationships, jobs, or environments that require you to shrink. You reclaim your time, your voice, your energy. You begin to dream bigger and love yourself louder. That courage is the gateway to a more expansive life. As you embody this liberation, people may react. Some may be uncomfortable with your authenticity because it challenges their expectations. But others, those who are meant for you, will be inspired by your boldness. You'll start to attract relationships built on respect, not performance. Love that doesn't require pretending. Success that doesn't depend on approval. And fulfillment that comes from a line, not applause. Ultimately, liberation is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of performance, people-pleasing, and fear. It's about honoring that version of you unapologetically. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you will never want to go back. Because nothing is more powerful than a person who no longer needs permission to exist fully and freely. That is the real gift of letting go of approval. It gives you back to yourself.